What am I supposed to do with this? Do you ever see these giant hunks of meat at Costco or your regular grocery store and you just think, man, that's such a good deal, but I have no idea what I'm even supposed to do with something like that? Well, in this video, I'm gonna break down for you one of my favorite cuts, which is a full pork loin. I'm gonna talk about all the different ways that I use it, cook it, how we can make this one piece of meat that's $2.49 a pound last and eat in such versatile ways. Our family loves it and it's one of our go-to cuts. So stick around. This video is brought to you by Element. It is currently 112 degrees here in Arizona and it's not even the hottest part of the day. Electrolytes are a must. The minute you go outside, you just start sweating, and in Arizona, it evaporates from you so quickly you don't even realize how dehydrated you're getting. So I load up on this packet of unflavored electrolytes every morning, which is sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and no other fillers, no sweetener, nothing. And it really helps to keep me hydrated throughout the day. I also have been loving their new cans of sparkling water as a treat, and this is where I can get some extra electrolytes. We spend time in the pool and you just can get depleted so quickly. So it's important to make sure that I'm really proactive with my electrolytes. Element has a deal for all my subscribers where you can go to drinkelement.com/LAURAESPATH and you can get a free sample pack with any purchase that lets you try all 8 of their drink mix packet flavors. They have 100% money back guarantee. They'll swap out the flavors. They just want to make sure that you get one that you absolutely love. You can get these full pork loins at Costco or Sam's Club, and typically they're around $2.49 a pound. So this full pork loin is $18. And Costco has an $8 off sale a couple of times a year where I stock up on a bunch of them. But even if you don't have a Costco or a Sam's Club near you, you can get a whole or half pork loin, usually on a great deal at a regular grocery store or Walmart, or even from your local butcher. Using pork loin as a side or as our main dish is one of the ways that we keep things budget friendly around here, because it's the perfect way to balance things out when beef and steaks are getting more expensive. We can eat this for a meal or we can have it as a side dish to our steaks. And I'm gonna break it down now while it's still fresh and freeze it in a couple of different ways to save it for some very specific meals in the future. So let me show you that and then we'll cook some of it up. This can be a messy prep, so I tend to buy like 4 or 5 of these at the same time, and then I'll just spend half an hour like doing all of this prep for all of them, and then I get the mess over with. When I'm doing a bulk meat prep like this, I love these paper disposable cutting boards, especially with a huge piece of meat like this. I don't have a cutting board that's big enough for this one, and so even though they're a little expensive because they're disposable, but it's nice when I'm doing like a huge prep like this, or I'm like breaking down a turkey or something. I love these disposable cutting boards. So I'm going to prep some paper towels. There is a bunch of juice in the bag, and so once I cut this open and my hands are all covered in pork juice, I don't want to be touching everything. So prep myself some paper towels, and then I do all of this right next to a sink. I like to just cut a hole in the bag and let some of the juice drain out, and then I'll start peeling all the bag off. We'll move that out of the way, and now I know my hands are gross, so I gotta be careful what I'm touching. You don't have to use gloves, obviously, like you're prepping meat for your own house, but I hate getting all the meat and fat under my nails, especially when I like have a fresh manicure or something, so I tend to use gloves just to make it a little easier on myself. And it is slippery. Okay, we're gonna take this and go right onto my paper towels. And then I made sure that there was an end already dangling off my paper towels, and we're going to get all of this nice and dry. And then I usually do this by the sink and by the trash can to make things easier on myself. When I'm buying this, I actually don't look for just the biggest pork roast. I kind of look through the bag and try to find one that has as much of this dark meat on it as possible. This is gonna be the rib end, and then what's this whiter is gonna be the sirloin end. The rib end is gonna be fattier and more tender, and so I'm trying to get as much of that as possible. And then I think I'm gonna show you 4 different things that I can do with this piece of meat. Supplies that I have on hand, I have my cutting board. It's all dried off now. I'm gonna use a really sharp knife. This is the same knife we've been using for like 6 years. I'll link it in the description if you're looking for a good one. Obviously a boning knife would be better for trimming or small things, but if you just need like one versatile knife, this is what I recommend. I'm also gonna use a ruler. When I'm cutting something like pork chops, I want them to be nice and even so they'll cook evenly. So I'm gonna use a ruler for it, and then I have some vacuum seal bags ready to go and be loaded up as well. I'm actually gonna trigger some carnivores, and you're welcome to leave all of the fat on if you want, but for me, there's like an extra rope of fat that I think ends up not cooking as evenly, so I'm gonna trim this like extra chunk of fat off, and then for most of this, I'm gonna keep the rest of the fat on. Sometimes I take this extra fat and trimmings and I'll just save it, and I can use it for cooking later on. But we are gonna leave most of that fat on there. This ribeye end is gonna be the most tender, but it is kind of uneven. And so my favorite thing to do with this is to trim it off, and then we are going to cube it up and turn it into pork nuggets. So I try to just give myself some good sized chunks of this, and then these are gonna go in the air fryer, and I'm actually gonna save these out, and I'm gonna make these for the kids for their lunch today, so I'll show you at the end how I do that. And I think I'm gonna do one more little bit to do for nuggets, just based on how the meat was. If you see here, this is where we're starting to get that white meat versus that dark meat, so I wanted to keep as much of that dark meat as possible for the nuggets. And I'm gonna kind of cut this chop into fourths, and we're gonna set this aside for lunch today. Now, when you see this, it almost looks like a beef ribeye, and that's why we call these a pork ribeye, where we see this nice fatty cap on top, and then we have the middle. These are gonna be the perfect pork chops, super tender and juicy with a little bit of fat on top. And so I'm gonna make these about 1 inch thick. It's a plastic ruler that then I can just throw in the dishwasher, but I'm gonna measure these and score them real easily with my knife so that they end up being about 1 inch thick. And I think I'm gonna make myself 5 of these, which would make for a really good meal for our family. As you can see, the further down the pork loin we go, the less of this ribeye cap we have, and then now we're kind of left with none. So as much as I have ribeye cap for, I'm gonna use those for pork chops. And then I can freeze these, you know, together in like one package, knowing that my family, my husband and I would each eat, my husband will eat 2, and then the kids and I would each eat 1, along with some kind of beef for a meal. Then I am left with this full sirloin end of the pork loin, and it's the one that's gonna be a lot leaner. It's all that white meat pork. If I am buying only a half of these or a half of a pork loin from Walmart or the regular grocery store, I personally am gonna look for one that has more of that dark meat on it, because I want at least part of that in it. So when you're looking for the half in the grocery store, just make sure you know what you're getting depending on what you wanna use it for. I'm gonna cut this in half, and we're gonna save half of it with the fat on for roasting whole, and then we'll slice it and have it as like a pork roast, and you could do that in the oven or the smoker. And then the other half, I'm actually gonna trim all the fat off, and we're gonna freeze it, and then I'll be using it to slice up and make pork chips and pork jerky out of it. I grabbed a smaller knife to get some of this fat off so I don't end up taking a bunch of the meat off as well. Since I'm using this section for jerky and for pork chips, I want it to be as lean as possible. Jerky doesn't dehydrate as well if there's fat on it, and then also it doesn't save as well at room temperature. So if you have jerky with fat on it, you have to refrigerate it and it'll go rancid a lot faster. But when I'm traveling or I want some pork chips to last a really long time, the leaner it is, the better it will save and the crunchier it's gonna get. It's gonna get nice and crispy. You know, you can use some fatty meat for jerky, but it's not gonna get as crispy. It's gonna end up being more chewy and tender. So if you're looking for a crunch like I do with these pork chips, then you want to get all the fat off. And now we can save this fat for cooking and for other things. I am stocked up for a few days. I have all my fat scraps saved that I'm going to vacuum seal these as well and freeze them. I have my lean roast for some jerky. This one is crucial that you freeze it flat and straight because I'm going to cut it from frozen in order to cut the pork like as thin as possible. I have like a meat chopping machine that I'll use to chop these paper thin. And so I need this to freeze really flat because it's going to be used from frozen. Everything else is gonna be thawed before we use it again, but I have my pork chops and then I have a pork roast that I'll use and we'll roast it whole for a meal. I have a Food Saver vacuum sealer, but then I just get generic bags from Amazon. It's a lot cheaper that way. Now I'm gonna make those pork nuggets for the kids for lunch. And so I have just a couple tablespoons of some melted butter. And to that, I'm gonna add a little bit of adobo seasoning. We're gonna put a little Italian seasoning in it. And then some Parmesan cheese. We're gonna give that a good mix, and then I'm gonna throw in all of that raw pork to this. So this is all of those ribeye pork chunks that have all kinds of good fat and marbling on them. And then look, the gloves are still coming in handy here. So I'm gonna mix this all around and get those really covered. I'm gonna throw them into a 400-degree air fryer, and they're gonna get nice and crispy. These roll in the air fryer for about 8 minutes. So just use your meat thermometer and make sure you don't overcook them. The minute they get overcooked, they're gonna be tough and really dry. The kids are gonna have these for lunch with a little fruit, some vegetables, and Nathaniel will dip them in sugar-free barbecue sauce.
Better than last time. Way there.
Those were so good. What do you think?
So good.
Those are better than last time. Because it's the dark meat pork. Overall, I hope this video was helpful. If you want to know how to break down any other big cuts of meat or how to cook anything else that I mentioned in this video, just comment below and let me know. Thanks for watching.